Reese Rambles, episode 11, the official podcast of Control Alt Reese, as I'm sure you know by now. And welcome, and what a response I had to my previous video last week, or I say video, my previous podcast last week, when I had a nice chat with Lee from the YouTube channel More Fun Making It. And if you're not familiar with Lee's channel, he fixes computers and stuff. He kind of rose to fame building a virtual pinball table and a bar top arcade machine. And that's all stuff that I probably should have said in last week's episode. And just a complete lack of preparation on my part. But if you listen to the whole thing, I'm sure you probably absorbed that information anyway over the course of the conversation. And I've had a couple of people mention that it did cut out a bit abruptly at the end. We didn't do a proper outro. I should have asked him where we can find links to all of his stuff and whatever. But I was very conscious that Lee had other commitments and kind of had to get off. And I don't know. I'm not very professional at this, am I? I've only done 10 episodes. Just cut me some slack. I need to practice somehow. But yeah, all good, all very positive. There's one thing that we did end up chatting about afterwards, actually, after we both kind of listened to it, and something that perhaps didn't come across in that episode. We talked a lot about kind of YouTube and stats and analytics and growing channels and all of that kind of stuff. And one thing that we didn't really touch on was, of course, doing YouTube for fun as a creative outlet and not really caring too much about all of that side of things. And, of course, it's very valid. It's a perfectly, worthy endeavour to want to make videos for the fun and the creativity aspect of that, and to express yourself and to put those out there, and not be constantly chasing numbers and getting disappointed when a video doesn't perform quite as well as the previous video. And I think just because we're kind of on the same wavelength of having this plan for global domination and wanting to take over the world via our YouTube channels, we just kind of didn't touch on that aspect either. But it's something we discussed afterwards, and something that I did say to Lee that I would mention in this one, because the great thing about YouTube, it's something that I did mention. The great thing about YouTube is that there's so many different channels with so much to offer, and so many people coming from different angles with their offerings, and that's kind of what makes it such a fantastic platform, and a platform that anyone can sign up for and start uploading to. And as I've alluded to in the past, and as I've mentioned in quite a few of these now, if you fancy it and you want to give it a go, then by all means do it. Get a video recorded, get it uploaded. Come to my Discord server and spam it there, and let us all have a look at it, because they're lovely people, and definitely will receive it in the manner in which it is intended. So yeah, just wanted to mention that anyway. I think my note here says doing it for fun is fine, is what I've written on my document here. Perhaps not if you're a Catholic, but maybe we shouldn't go into that. Sorry, I made a note that I was going to make that joke and then completely forgot about it. So there it is. Awkwardly shoehorned in after the fact, as we like to do here on Reese Rambles. Anyway, so a couple of things that I just wanted to vaguely ramble about this week, which should come as no surprise to regular listeners. My wife and I, on Friday and Saturday nights, we like to put the TV on. We don't necessarily pay all that much attention to it. Sometimes we're scrolling through our phones. I'm sure you know what it's like. And we like to have a glass of wine or two, or a bottle or two, and watch. We actually watch quite a lot of YouTube. Quite a lot. That was very British of me, wasn't it? Quite a lot of YouTube. There's a sort of a growing list of channels that we watch, mainly based on the recommendations on the YouTube app on Android TV, really. Well, there's a lot of stuff that I will kind of bookmark over the course of the week if I think it's something she'll enjoy. I don't know if she knows that I do that, but if I watch something in the week and I think she'll like it, then I will bookmark it, and then I'll pretend that I haven't seen it on a Friday, because that's the kind of husband that I am. And but sometimes we watch films, so. We've watched quite a lot of stuff. We've watched all the Studio Ghibli films over the years. We watched a good mix of stuff. We like Rocket Man. We like Taron Egerton. He's obviously got a shout out in my previous video about the Atari PC and Tetris and all that. And so she really enjoyed the Tetris film. Obviously partly because it has Taron Egerton in it. But yeah, I was quite surprised that she was interested in that aspect. And so I thought I would give the Steve Jobs film a try. And I know there's two of them. And I thought the one that I had was the Ashton Kutcher one. And I thought, well, that will go down quite well because, I'm sure she likes Ashton Kutcher. All of our generation do. And turns out the one that I downloaded, the one that I was streaming legitimately and legally, was the other one, the Michael Fassbender one, which came out around the same time. Of course, there was the Steve Jobs autobiography. The Steve Jobs biography, the official one, which came out in 2015. I think I should have looked that up. And off the back of that, there were two films made, two quite different films, I think. I haven't actually seen the other one. I hadn't seen either of them until we watched this one. And I think they cover slightly different sort of eras of Apple history. And we watched the Michael Fassbender one, and yeah, it was a great film. It was entertaining. It was very sort of engaging, and it was very historically accurate. I mean, Apple isn't my area of expertise particularly, but I was quite surprised based on what I'd kind of read in his biography, and it was a few years ago, and based on kind of what I know, just knowing stuff that I know, that it was actually quite authentic and followed sort of the events that it covered quite well, really. Obviously, you've got dramatisation, you've got to make things entertaining, and it's Hollywood and all that, and I appreciate that. I don't expect every film that I watch about tech stuff to be 100% historically accurate. After all, it's entertainment, and I'm sure it also spurs a lot of people on to actually go out and look up the real stories as well. But I thought they'd done a great job of that, and I actually really enjoyed that film. And I thought that Fassbender made a fantastic Steve Jobs. So, good acting all round. One aspect they didn't really touch on, spoilers if you haven't seen it, but kind of a mild spoiler, is that there was a lot of focus on Steve's daughter, Lisa, or Steve's alleged daughter. And obviously, Apple released a computer called the Apple Lisa before they made the Mac, and the Mac's operating system was based on the Lisa operating system. It was kind of a cut-down version because the Lisa was ridiculously expensive when it came out. And there was a whole paternity lawsuit at the time, and part of the argument in court was that, well, you've named a computer after your daughter. You've got this girl, Lisa, who you're claiming not to be the father of. Why on earth would you name a computer after her if she's not your daughter? And that was actually part of the court case, as is my understanding at the time. And if you know that, I think it adds quite a lot of context to the film and sort of her part in the film. But it's not something that's really mentioned, and it's something that they probably should have taken a little bit of time to explain, just to put that into context. But anyways, a very minor nitpick, incredibly nerdy one. All in all, it's certainly compared to the Tetris movie, and like I say, I enjoyed the Tetris movie quite a lot. I think it was a lot more historically accurate. So I can highly recommend that one. That is my movie pick of the week because it's the only movie I've watched in the past week. And the Jobs film from whenever it came out, 2015. Starring Michael Fassbender. I don't think I've actually seen anything else that he's been in. I know the name. Whenever you kind of hear his name round and about, I always think of him. I always think he sounds like a racing driver, doesn't he? Michael Fassbender. Like he should be driving in Formula One or something. Not an actor, and apparently he's Irish as well, which I didn't know. Did a very good Steve Jobs. And it got me thinking that there isn't an Atari film, is there? Obviously, Atari's kind of more my area of expertise. And a few years back, there was an excellent book, which was written by Kurt Vendel and Marty Goldberg, called Business is Fun. And they interviewed some of the kind of early pioneers of Atari. And I think they even interviewed Ted Dabney for that one, who was the co-founder of Atari. Possibly even Nolan Bushnell. It's been far too long since I read that book. I can't even remember. I read so much Atari stuff that it all kind of blurs into one. But I do remember that it was an excellent book, and it's one I've recommended on this podcast before. But it really got me thinking that those kind of early years of Atari, and like Nolan Bushnell and his notorious hot tub parties where they were all having orgies and doing drugs and all of that stuff. It'd make an awesome film, wouldn't it? It'd be like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of film. But rather than being about a bad guy who rips a load of people off and takes their life savings for dodgy investments, it's a guy who, sort of parties and makes cool games and invents cool stuff. Or I should say, a group of people who party and make games and invent cool stuff. Why is it not a thing, Hollywood? Why is there not an Atari film? I want to know. I know there are a few different films that have kind of touched on it over the years, and a few documentaries and stuff that have kind of covered those early days. But get some big name on board. I don't know, actors who's famous nowadays. Anyway, you can tell I don't watch a lot of films. But you can have that idea for free. Somebody do it. Somebody get on it. I will act as a consultant. I will supply the hardware. Let's do this. Let's do this thing. Let's make an Atari film along the lines of the Steve Jobs film. And it will be excellent, I promise. It will have lots of partying in it and people will enjoy it a lot. Anyway, a bit of a diversion, as you would expect from me, of course. Sorry, I got distracted there. My phone rang, a work-related call. How incredibly rude of people to expect me to do work, of all things. Anyway, let's get back into it. So, the thing that I wanted to talk about this week, really, besides the random Steve Jobs and Atari stuff, is our bees. So if you've been watching my second channel at all, or if you've kind of followed any of my other social media stuff, you will know that I am a beekeeper, or that my wife and I are beekeepers, I should say, and that we are probably the world's worst beekeepers. We started back in 2015-ish. Was it? The year before we got married, I think. And we did a beekeeping course. We did a full day course at River Cottage. If you've ever watched River Cottage in the UK, it was a programme that used to be on Channel 4. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, of course, who used to be a bit of a greasy hippie type and is now a greasy hippie turned corporate type with his workshops and events and things that he runs in his cottage, which is no longer a cottage because it's massive. And we were on holiday in the area, and I wanted to pop down there anyway just to see what it was all about, because obviously we've watched the TV programme over the years. And I had a look at their courses, and they do like cookery courses and all that kind of stuff. And basically everything was pretty much sold out apart from beekeeping. And I remember my wife, and we weren't married at the time, but that's relevant. My wife saying, basically, I remember her saying that her mum has a pen pal in Germany that she's had since school. They basically did a pen pal thing when her mum was in school with a school in Germany, and they wrote letters to each other as children. And this thing has kind of carried on throughout their lives, and they're still in touch now, and they send each other Christmas presents, and they talk to each other, and it's really nice that they kind of kept in contact. But she remembers going over there when she was a kid, and basically these Germans are beekeepers. They have beehives in their garden, and it was one of the things that she kind of remembered from being young, and just thinking it was really cool that they had bees. And so I thought, let's do a beekeeping course. That sounds like a really interesting thing to do. And I must admit, I really got into it. It was, I admit that sticking your hands and your face inside a hive full of bees isn't for everyone. In fact, it's not something I particularly enjoy now, but there's just something about it, just kind of looking after them and raising them and, having them pollinate all of your plants, because we grow a lot of fruits and vegetables and things in our garden as well. And since we've had the bees, we've had absolutely loads of fruit off of them, because obviously the bees just pollinate everything with extreme prejudice. Obviously, they're going to go for the easiest food source. So if it's right outside their hive, they pollinate literally everything in the garden, which is great. Unfortunately, there was a bit of an incident last year with my wife. She got stung. Basically, we get stung occasionally. It's kind of an occupational hazard of having a beehive in your garden. But she got stung on the head. Basically, a bee got tangled up in her hair, and she had a really bad reaction to it. I actually ended up calling an ambulance in the end because, just because of the way that she reacted. And she ended up having allergy tests and stuff, and they've given her an EpiPen and basically said that, yes, you are allergic to bee venom, and there is a chance that if you get stung, you could go into anaphylactic shock, which is obviously quite serious. So So unfortunately, we are going to have to get rid of the bees, which is a shame. I mean, we were always very hands-off with them. It's not like we took a lot of honey from them or anything like that. But, you know, they've kind of always been there and been kind of a part of our life. They do spoil the enjoyment of the garden a little bit. It does make it quite hazardous to mow the grass. I can close the hive if I do it the night before when all the bees are in, and then like mow the grass first thing in the morning, then it's safe. You know, just block the entrance so they can't get out, and that's fine. They're fine like that for, you know, at least for a while. I mean, in the winter there can be spans of days or even weeks where they don't leave the hive, so you know, it doesn't, you know, it's not kind of, it doesn't have an adverse effect on their health or anything like that. But yeah, it's unfortunately it's a bit of an end of an era, and it's something that I've wanted to make videos about in the past, and I have taken the camera out. I did do one video last year on this channel where we harvested the honey from the hive, and I kind of covered all of that process in detail and how we kind of get the frames out of the hive with the honey in and put them in the extractor, and you know, it's a thing that spins around that kind of flicks it out using centrifugal centripetal force, whichever one it is, and famous XKCD comic, of course. And then that drains into a bucket, and then you know, you filter it and you put it into jars. And in fact, I actually sent out jars of honey to my my UK patrons. Unfortunately, I couldn't send those overseas because there's quite strict laws on exporting honey, and they would have been intercepted and it would have gone to waste, which of course is a real shame because we don't get much. So I didn't really want to risk that, unfortunately. But yeah, really fascinating process and a lot of fun the few times that we've done it. But yeah, so we'll be doing one final extraction. I've put things in place to allow that to happen. Essentially, you take the top level of the hive, which is called a super, and that has the frames in it, which the bees make the honey in. And you put like a one-way door thing between the two. It's called a ported bee escape, I think, and it's in the thing called a crown board. And it means the bees leave that part of the hive, but then they can't get back in. They are still out and foraging and gathering nectar and stuff, and what they do is they basically store it in the bottom part of the hive, so it's fine. It doesn't really affect their kind of life cycle or anything for the few days that it's like that. And then once the bulk of them have vacated the top part of the hive, of course we take the frames out, shake out any existing bees into the hive, and put them in the spinner and extract the honey from those. And soon we'll be doing that for the last time. The bees are advertised in the local Beekeeping Association newsletter. I've had one inquiry from someone wanting to buy some bits and bobs, but not really interested in the actual bees, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, hopefully they'll be going to another beekeeper who can look after them properly, and we'll get the use of our garden back. And of course, Catherine's life will not be in danger when she goes into the garden, which is a real bonus. You know, it's quite nice to be able to enjoy your garden without the fear of dying at any given second. So yeah, but yeah, that's the bees. I stuck my head in there the other day when I was doing all of this stuff. There's a small like a portable hive called a nucleus, which you can transfer the brood frames into, which are the frames that the bees actually live on. And that's how you buy bees in the first place. You basically buy a nucleus, and it has the beehive frames inside with the bees living on them. And that can be, you know, it has a door on it which can be closed, and you can kind of tape the lid on so they can't escape. And then it's quite safe to kind of stick that in the back of your car. You know, I put that on the back seat of my car at the time and drove it sort of the 30 miles from the person that we bought them from. Incidentally, quite ironically, we actually bought them from someone who had developed a severe allergic reaction to bees and was getting out of beekeeping. So yeah, it's the circle of life, the circle of beekeeping. We should have known really that was a possibility. And then you obviously you build the hive, which is made out of cedar, and transfer the frames into it. And I remember that being a very pleasant and peaceful process. Unfortunately, I thought the other day when I was in there that they were being really calm and really nice. When you are a beekeeper and you kind of work with bees a lot, you kind of get a bit of a feeling as to kind of the mood of the hive. just based on kind of the noises that they make and kind of how they fly around and stuff. And I took the top off, and it was like I wasn't even there. They were all just kind of going about their business. So I thought, okay, now is the time to get these transferred into the nucleus, because someone's going to inevitably get in touch in the near future wanting to buy them, and it will be so much easier to transport them if they're already in the nucleus. Of course, we didn't need the super on the top with the honey frames in. So I thought, yes, let's strike now while they're nice and calm. And they were all right for the first few frames. I took the first couple out of the front of the hive. They hadn't really done anything with those. They hadn't built them out, and they weren't really using them for anything. So I thought, okay, I'll leave those out because they're a bit old and manky, and we don't need those. The nucleus only holds like 6 frames, I think, whereas the hive holds 11. So you can't transfer all of them over anyway, because obviously it's much smaller. And I got to the next one, which was full of brood, which is basically what you call the little the bee larvae, the baby bees. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll transfer this one into the nucleus, because obviously it's part of their kind of colony and part of their life cycle. And if someone wants to buy them, then they'll get the baby bees as well, of course. And I took that one out and I put it into the nucleus, and the bees, they started to get a bit agitated. So that there's like this background hum when you have the top off a beehive. It's a really sort of distinct noise. And there's a smell as well. It's a very distinct smell, which is like a kind of honey, waxy kind of smell, which is probably to be expected. And the kind of the tone of the hum changed, and I thought, they've noticed that I've taken a load of their babies away. Which, of course, is not necessarily something that they would take kindly to, but they were okay. We have the smoker thing that you see the beekeepers with, fully suited up in the bee suit, got rubber gloves on, the marigolds, the washing up gloves, and it's okay. I wasn't too intimidated. I've worked with them plenty before, so I carried on. I mean, I was partway through dismantling their house, so you can't really stop. And I picked the next frame up, and I'm not sure if the next frame is the one that had the queen on it. Now, I've never seen our current queen, because every time I've got to the point of, trying to take that frame out, the bees have gone absolutely mental. She's obviously very, very sensitive. Doesn't like to be messed around with. Unlike previous, I think this is the 3rd queen that we've had. The very first one that we had just didn't care at all. You could, you could take the frame out and you could wave it around and you could say, "Oh, look, here's the bees, there's the queen. Can you spot her?" kind of thing. And literally, the bees would just carry on as if you weren't even there. They're absolutely fantastic. But this current one, obviously, the queen releases pheromones which affect the mood of the hive, so to speak. And she obviously released a load of attack pheromones, and it was about the most dramatic beekeeping adventure I'd ever had. So I got stung through the rubber glove, right on the knuckle. The good thing is, because the sting doesn't... So when a bee stings, the stinger on the back of the bee has a barbed hook on it, and it gets stuck in the skin and carries on kind of pumping the venom into the skin. So if you get stung by a bee, the best thing... The thing you need to do is to get that stinger out as quickly as possible before it pumps too much venom into you. And but obviously the worst way to do that is to squeeze it, is to kind of grab it between your fingers and try and pull it out, because if you squeeze it, there's like a little venom sac in there, and that kind of pumps it into you, which is not what you want. Unfortunately, I was wearing rubber gloves and I'd been stung through the rubber glove. But fortunately, on the good side, it hadn't kind of fully penetrated, and I think it was just kind of just scratching the surface of the skin. Still hurt a lot. So the way I react to bee stings is that it's like being pricked with a pin, I think, is probably... Or like when you have like when you have an injection, when you have like a vaccination or whatever. You've got that kind of very brief, sharp, pain, and then it kind of aches for a bit afterwards. For me, that kind of lasts maybe 20 minutes, something like that. And then it's as if I hadn't been stung, a little bit red in kind of the immediate area. But and I've been stung plenty over the years, and it's always been the same. So I'd rather not be, to be entirely honest with you. But it's not the end of the world. So I carried on. I was quite knowing that they could sting me through the gloves, which is a first. They've never done that before. Is obviously something that I'd rather not know. I was quite happy being completely oblivious to the fact that that was a possibility. Obviously meant that I was a hell of a lot more cautious from that point going forwards. But every time I tried to touch that frame, they'd all just pipe up and they'd all be all over my face. And it was like, obviously, I had the beekeeping suit on with the veil over my face and everything else. So, but it's still quite an unpleasant experience, and obviously the noise as well, because they all just take off and it's like, ooh. And fortunately, our neighbours were out at the time, or at least they went in their garden. I don't do beekeeping stuff when our neighbours are in their gardens, because the bees can be agitated for a short while afterwards, at least. So, just as a courtesy to them. As far as I know, none of them have ever been stung. They've certainly never mentioned it. And so I had to abort that. And the frame that I'd taken out and put into the nucleus, I thought, okay, I'll put that back in the hive. And I went to grab that, and they were even more angry. Evidently, the pheromones were in full effect by this point. And, we've got the smoker and everything. And the idea of puffing them with the smoker is to try and sort of disrupt the transmission of the pheromones, which is the way the bees kind of communicate. But evidently it wasn't working. And I got attacked by even more bees, and I got stung on the head through the beekeeping suit, through the cotton suit, straight into the forehead, which again is something I'd rather not know about. It's it was another first, and another thing that. Another thing that really knocked my confidence. So at this point, it was absolute pandemonium. Tens of thousands of bees in the air, loud buzzing noise. They're all bouncing off me, desperately trying to sting me. So I thought, fine, have it your way. I put the hive back together with the frame out. I left that other frame on its own in the nucleus. The other bees that were on that frame that were tending to it, this was a few days ago now, and I've since been down. In fact, I went down this morning and rescued the nucleus. And all the bees that were on that frame kind of tending to those larvae have now obviously gone back into the main hive and abandoned it. And it's full of dead baby bees, which is sad. Obviously I don't like to kill things, really. But it does help to, ultimately the way a beehive works, it is a superorganism, and they will recover from that. And, it's not really the way to kind of look at them as individuals. All of the populated frames wouldn't have fit in the nucleus anyway. So any beekeeper that would have come and taken them away would have had to have at least abandoned some of them. And it does help to reduce their numbers, which, of course, makes the kind of potential future moving, which hopefully I'll attempt again at the weekend, against my better judgment. Hopefully does make that future attempt and a move at least a bit easier, because I can start again with the frames that are in there that I know are populated, and just get those moved over as quickly as possible into the nucleus, and probably take a few stings in the process. But that's kind of the life of the beekeeper. Occupational hazards, so to speak. A bit of a shame to have to get rid of them, really. If we had a lot more land, and I do have some friends who have a lot of land, and I have spoken to them, and I think I very nearly managed to convince them to take the bees off our hands, and on the promise of me kind of coming down and actually looking after them, and promising them some honey as well. But ultimately, they have small children, and they were a bit concerned about the kids sort of, getting a bit too inquisitive and investigating the hive and getting stung, which I totally understand. It's not for everyone as far as hobbies go. So I think it's the end of that chapter. Although you never know, maybe one day, if we've got the land for it and we can have them far enough away that I can kind of go and poke them very occasionally, and my wife doesn't have to get involved at all, perhaps we'll look at it again. But yeah, so just an amusing story about me getting attacked by bees, as I don't have a guest on this week. I think that's pretty much all that I wanted to cover. Check out the Steve Jobs film that you've probably already seen because it's years old, and I'll see what film we can come up with tonight. Obviously, we've got the coronation this weekend. Hopefully I won't express any of my opinions about politics or the royals or anything like that. If nothing else, it's an excuse to have a barbecue and get drunk, which is always appreciated. So that's the way I'm choosing to look at it. But yeah, hopefully nothing horrendous happens as far as all of that is concerned. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. And for those of you in the UK, I hope you have a wonderful bank holiday Monday tomorrow. But that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to Control Alt Reese. And yeah, I will see you next week.